God help you if you're some poor schlub white guy who ends up in court in front of this guy. Apparently, the heart and soul of his court is to discriminate against you, because that's what he's embracing. The judges that have been nominated by Joe Biden have been extraordinary. They have been extreme. They've been so egregious, they fill me with a sense I could not have previously imagined having, which is I long for Barack Obama. Because although I disagreed with many of President Obama's judicial nominees, they were comparatively moderate when put next to the radicals that the Biden White House keeps putting forward. You look at Judge Mustafa Kasubai, his questionnaire and history, and you would be forced to conclude that he is a radical leftist, if not an outright Marxist. Now, those are not my words. In one essay he wrote, Katsubai argued that the integration of Marxism with traditional economic theories of property, specifically that of Locke and Bentham, would, quote, provide a framework for relationships that enhance each unique self. Here's a pro tip. If a guy is writing love letters to Marxism, maybe he's not the best candidate to be a federal judge. Also in that same piece, he argued, quote, the aspiration towards intimate knowing, the intimate knowing of oneself and others in our community, is a creative struggle towards redefining property. How many of y'all want to redefine property? And maybe the answer is all the members of the committee on the Democrat side do. Your constituents don't. Redefining property, being told, for example, the home, your family home that was your home and your mother's home and your grandmother's home is no longer your property. It is the state's to do with what they will. Redefining property is an objective of Marxist, and by Marxist I mean communist. Communism is not simply theoretical. My family has suffered at the hands of communists. And yet in the Biden administration, that appears to be a qualification for becoming a federal judge. Not only are his views extreme, but when it comes to gender and sex, they're really out there. In the Wisconsin Women's Law Journal, Judge Kasubai wrote a piece titled Destabilizing Power in Rape, Why Consent Theory in Rape Law is Turned on Its Head. He cited radical Professor Catherine McKinnon, who argued, quote, sexuality itself is a power web in which heterosexual relations per se are infused with violence and control, and that most intercourse is rape. Is it the position of the Democrats on this committee that, quote, heterosexual relations per se are infused with violence and control and most intercourse is rape? That's moonbeam nuts. And you all know that. But there's a reason every Democrat senator is looking down, because you can't defend these views to your constituents. You're counting on the fact that the corporate media will not tell your constituents about the loons you're voting to confirm. Katsubai, also in apparent agreement, quoted Professor McKinnon as saying, quote, I employ the view that rape is sex in order to focus on the significance of consent in rape law, and non-consent must be presumed. That's a lot of things, but that's not actually American criminal law. This guy's been nominated to be a real judge applying the real law. Katsubai tied these two together in the same article, where he quoted approvingly from McKinnon the phrase, quote, sexuality is to feminism what work is to Marxism. Now, to be honest, I don't know what the hell that means, but I don't like it. It's out there. What is it that you see this guy crowing about how wonderful Marxism is, and you say, hot diggity damn, we found us a judge? We also know that it is his view, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, will be central to his approach to the law. How do we know this? Well, because he said it. And here's his quote: DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is the heart and soul of the court system. Can we say that? Yeah, I just did. And I'm saying it proudly. Well, DEI, the radical anti-racism school that embraces discrimination, says we should discriminate against people that are perceived to be oppressors in favor of people that are categorized as victims. God help you if you're some poor schlub white guy who ends up in court in front of this guy. Apparently, the heart and soul of his court is to discriminate against you, because that's what he's embracing. He's also said that America is, quote, deeply Islamophobic. Well, we're the freest nation on the face of the earth, and somehow he couldn't seem to be bothered to worry about the rabid anti-Semitism that we're seeing at radical schools across this country, as the same kind of leftists like Judge Katsubai are announcing their allegiance to Hamas and terrorizing Jewish students. Katsubai's rulings on the bench are also extreme. Think back to the 2020 Black Lives Matter and Antifa riots all across the country. Major American cities burned for weeks, for months on end. Police cars were firebombed, police officers were murdered, stores were looted, people were assaulted. In Portland, Oregon, this was the federal courthouse. Does that bring warm tinglies about the fair enforcement of law? Portland, Oregon, the courthouse, the federal courthouse, was subjected to a 60-day siege, 2 months. Rioters firebombed the building. They fought federal agents. They used high-powered lasers to blind federal agents. 60 days, night after night after night, a federal court on fire. Well, what's Judge Katsubai's view on this? He wasn't in Portland, Oregon. He was in Eugene, Oregon. As Eugene, like the rest of the country, was facing risks from this riots, Eugene imposed a temporary curfew to try to impose law and order. What did Judge Katsubai do? Number one, he wrote an opinion recommending the curfew be struck down. Nope, you can't have a curfew. The night belongs to the rioters, to the people burning courthouses, not the people who'd like to be safe in their own homes. He went further than that. He actually denied qualified immunity to the city manager and the police chief and said, you know what, Mr. Police Chief? Because you imposed a curfew, because you tried to protect people's safety, you can be sued. In effect, he said, sue them for trying to keep the people safe and take their last penny. I understand a Democrat administration and a Democrat Senate is going to confirm liberal judges. That should not be news. What is astonishing is not a single Senate Democrat on this committee has been willing to demonstrate even one iota of independence in exercising advice and consent. When Donald Trump was president, he nominated a lot of judges. Y'all didn't like the Trump judges. You voted against pretty much all of them. I will tell you, I voted for most of them. But Republicans on this side, there were several judicial nominees that we said, no, this doesn't meet the standards, pull it down. And the Trump White House did. That's actually how the constitutional system is supposed to work. For whatever reason, Democrats on this committee don't believe in that. No matter what nutcase gets nominated, like the Politburo, you all vote da. Yesterday, we had a judicial nominee who 3 years ago signed an open memo to the governor of Connecticut calling on him to empty the prisons and release every violent criminal in Connecticut, release murderers and serial rapists and child molesters. Now, that's not your run-of-the-mill lefty. That position is nuts. I don't care how left-wing your state is. California, Vermont, Georgia, New Jersey, you can go to any of your states, grab your citizens and say, hey, what do you think? Good idea. We go down to the prison, let everyone go? Nobody's going to like that. Your citizens that you're elected to represent will say, what the heck is wrong with you? This judge is a radical, is extreme. If he's confirmed, we can count on him to let violent criminals out of jail. And I'll tell you, if Senate Democrats continue to rubber stamp whatever radical this White House sends them, people are going to die. When you release murderers from jail, they turn around and they commit more murders. And when that happens, the work of this committee, rubber stamping, putting extreme radicals on the bench, will have been directly responsible. And I hope you're prepared to look in the eyes of the victims' families, of the people that will pay the consequences of putting on the bench men and women that are manifestly unsuited to being judges.